Assalamualaikum, and my name is Muhammad Arif bin Muhammad Hafiz. Today we will present an article critique on Smart Home System, a comprehensive review by Chakraborty et al. For introduction, we will start with the background. The rapid advancement of IoT, artificial intelligence, and wireless communication has accelerated the development of smart home systems, making them an important research area in modern engineering. Next, the purpose of the article is to provide a comprehensive review of current smart home research by identifying recent technological developments, research trends, challenges, and future opportunities. Finally, the article's contribution is that it combines and organizes findings from many previous studies into a single well-structured review. It also identifies research gaps, making it a valuable reference for future research and industry.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Maulida Rizka and I will be presenting the summary of the article. The article reviews recent research on smart home systems and explains the technologies and applications used in modern smart homes. The authors used a systematic literature review and analyzed 111 research papers from 6 scientific databases. The review found that IoT is the main technology used, together with AI, machine learning, cloud computing, and wireless sensor networks. Smart home systems are mainly used for home security, energy management, healthcare, and home automation. Overall, smart home systems improve convenience, safety, and energy efficiency, but challenges such as security, privacy, and cost still need to be addressed.
For clarity of the research question, this paper is a literature review, not an experimental study, so it doesn't have one hypothesis. Instead, the authors use the goal question matrix framework to build 4 questions. What methods, sensors, networking, and security approaches are used in smart home system? That's actually a strength. The questions are explicit and map directly onto the paper's later sections, making it easy to follow. But there's a weakness too. The authors claimed earlier reviews had a gap in the literature without really proving it. They don't break down what those papers actually got wrong. And their 4 questions just ask what we use, not what works best. That's part of why the paper covers so much ground. 6 microcontroller types, 17 sensor types, but stays fairly shallow on any single point.
Next, the appropriateness of methods. The authors use a systematic literature review, which is suitable because the study focuses on reviewing existing research. One strength is the structured review process, with clear research questions and selection criteria. They also analyzed 111 papers from 6 reputable databases, making the review comprehensive. However, the review only included English language and mostly recent studies. It also did not assess the quality of each paper in detail. Overall, the method is appropriate, but a more detailed quality assessment would improve the reliability of the findings. Thank you.
Hi, now let's talk about the validity of the results and data interpretation of the article. The results are valid because it was made based on a systematic review of 111 peer-reviewed research. They also use synthesized analysis using both quantitative analysis and also comprehensive analysis. Comprehensive analysis is where when researchers divide some categories to ease their findings, and then they also compare the frequency of the technologies across the review papers. To support this evidence, the studies were made based on the publication trends analysis from 2018 until 2020. So with that, they also can explore more knowledge about the studies they want to make about the smart home system, and they use IE Explore, and majority of the studies were made based on the experimental reviews across their research papers. Although the article provides a comprehensive and well-structured review, there were also some limitations that can be identified. First of all, limited literature scope. As from the last 6 years they studied the topic, they only use English language publications. This may not only exclude important studies from other languages, but they also may overlook significant other early foundational studies about the topic. Second, reliance on secondary data, as they do not have any original experiments that can support their evidence. Thus, some biases may happen and can cause effects on our conclusions. And then, thirdly, limited discussion were made on important factors, as these important factors was used to identify if the smart home system is really good for our household and communities. Lastly, evaluation of technologies, as we all know that the technology evolving and emerging from time to time. So the findings from the research review may be outdated.
Moving on to the next segment, which is the relevance and the significance of the findings. My name is Nurul Izzah Shikimanti Zamal, and I would like to divide this segment into 2 actually. The strength and the weaknesses that are recognized on this journal. So first off, we start off with the strength. The first thing that I recognize is that the authors clearly stated their key points, in which SHS enhance convenience, energy efficiency, and security. They also raise concerns regarding privacy, interoperability, and accessibility, meaning that the authors weighs in both views of SHS, clearly stating that the papers that they choose for their research is unbiased and looking at both sides or perspectives of smart home system. The next strength is that the authors clearly made a significant and impactful outcome in which they identified the common technology used for this specific topic, SHS, so they made it convenient for students, developers, and engineers who are doing low-cost prototype automation system. How is this helpful to the industry? It supports further development of SHS. Moving on to the weaknesses, although they did identify the common relevant technology, it is unfortunate that they only focus on lab-grade applications instead of the real-world implementations or the commercial productions. These have several limitations, including failure in evaluating how these low-cost configurations work under real-life stresses. For example, when there is severe network congestion, power outages, or maybe physical interferences. Next is probably the most mainstream weakness that I identify because it affects their whole findings. If you see now on the screen, it is showing one of the figures that is pasted on the journal, in which it's showing the paper selection process from different databases. Basically, this figure shows how they deducted from originally 475 papers into 111 papers without stating why or in what stage did they drop the irrelevant papers. The common factor is that they disobeyed the Systematic Universal Academic Review Guidelines, PRISMA framework, in which the first situation, they failed to provide a transparent numerical breakdown of the selection process, like I mentioned it before. They did not disclose how many papers were eliminated at each screening process or even what each screening process is. They did not provide the standard form of the 4-phase or step-by-step PRISMA flow diagram, and instead they illustrated the diagram in which I pasted here. Showing now is the supposed PRISMA flow diagram, in which this diagram clearly states at what stage, why, and how many articles were dropped in order to do the review. Third, the authors do not perform a formal risk of bias assessment or quality evaluation. These 3 rules that I mentioned are proofs that they did not follow the PRISMA guidelines for review. And by that, their search logic, database filters, and study selection criteria suffers from a slight unaddressed bias. As a result, the findings presented in this journal, while informative, should be interpreted with caution because its methodology lacks the rigor expected of a systematic review. Moving on to the ethical concerns, even though the authors did acknowledge initially that papers and researches about SHS will intrude data privacy and also challenge basic cybersecurity, unfortunately they still challenge the same ethics by technically treating human beings as purely data sources rather than practical human beings.
To conclude, our critic found that Smart Home System, a comprehensive review, is a valuable and well-organized review article. It successfully summarizes recent developments in smart home technologies by covering important areas such as IoT, artificial intelligence, sensors, communication technologies, and smart home applications. However, we also identified several limitations. The article lacks a detailed quality assessment of the reviewed studies, provides limited transparency in its study selection process, and offers relatively little discussion on real-world implementation challenges, privacy, and ethical issues. Overall, despite these weaknesses, the article remains a useful reference for researchers, engineers, and students because it provides a comprehensive overview of current smart home technologies and highlights future research opportunities. Future review study can be improved by following more rigorous systematic review standards and providing deeper critical analysis. Thank you.